Welcome back to Accelerating Timelines. In this episode, we are going to be exploring Sovereign by Nature, Unmasking Hidden Agendas. We're going to be looking at how movements like transhumanism, the influence of dark esoteric practices, and other influences and agendas may be steering humanity away from our natural organic timelines. We're going to be discussing the importance of recognizing these influences and the necessity of reclaiming personal sovereignty physically, mentally, and spiritually. We're going to be channeling guidance from higher realms and looking at ways that we can support you through tools or practices that we can share on this podcast so that we can remain sovereign, which is our innate birthright. We're going to be discussing what that means, what does it mean to be sovereign, and what are these hidden agendas that seem to be chipping away at that. So we are your hosts, Astara and myself, Bethan Carr.
Hi, Bethan. It's great to be back with you on our Accelerating Timelines podcast. It's my favorite bit of the week, us connecting. And I'm Astara, and I am an angelic communicator and clairvoyant. I work a lot with star seeds and twin flames and anyone birthing the new earth. And I'm really excited today about this topic because this comes up a lot, and particularly since 2020, we're all being thrown into the cauldron about this idea about who owns our body, who owns our minds, who owns us. And I think this is something that's going to be very, very important as we move into the future to understand.
It's extremely interesting as we dive into our sovereignty. It's empowering to understand what's influencing us, how we can empower ourselves to be more protective of our organic timeline, of our natural way of being without some of the agendas and impacts that humanity have been facing.
What I want to start with is a very human aspect, which is when I gave birth to my first daughter. And maybe this is when this first came up for me very, very strongly because I was aware I was going through a very natural process, being pregnant, giving birth, and I knew that I wanted a home birth. I know that it's legal to have home births in this country. I'd done all the reading up on it that I needed to do, and it showed me that having a home birth was safer than being in a hospital, especially for interventions and baby safety and baby health and mummy health. And in that process, I was met with a few blocks. And the first block was my midwife at my first midwife appointment, who kept me waiting for like half an hour outside, and I felt really ill. I went in and she was very adamant that she was going to make me give birth in the hospital. And this began for me quite a long journey because I realized that innately my wisdom, my body wisdom, was telling me, no, I'm choosing to have a natural birth, to have a home birth. And, I had all the evidence to show me that this was okay and this was right for me. And yet I was met with a kind of state-run situation where I was going to be moved out of this personal choice that I was making. And also it would affect the personal choice of my birthing process and also that of my child. And so I think this was my first real feeling that I wasn't completely able to make choices that I wanted to. I wasn't completely sovereign about how I used my own energy and my rights and also that of my baby that I was bringing into the world.
It's such a powerful time when you're going to be giving birth. You've got the creative force of the universe coming through your body. And it's definitely a time that I also felt like my sovereignty, there was an attempt to hijack it and to hijack decisions, just like you're saying. I too was looking to have a home birth, which I did have, but came up against a lot of resistance, and a lot of doctors, consultants were brought in to try and persuade me to make different decisions. And it's a time where, as a woman and a mother, you have to be the strongest you've ever been.
And that's because our body is a sacred vessel. It's divine intelligence. It's encoded, especially when you're pregnant. I think you have an idea of that you are a vessel for this amazing creative force. And I think that really showed me, not that I needed to see it really, that it didn't matter what laws were placed on me, what someone else was saying that I should do or had to do, or protocols are, or this, that, and the other. I was making the choice. No, this was how I was going to birth my child, and nobody was going to have any ownership over me or them. And I was shocked at how much resistance I came up against in this process.
There is an agenda there because it's when you're really coming into your power as a woman, and there's all sorts of energies that I think certain groups want that they can siphon off during this very powerful time. A lot of what happens to you as a mother and when you're just birthing and in the time just afterwards, there's so much control and so much that's attempting to condition you to give up your sovereignty. There's so much conditioning that I can see in the medical system. So we get used to giving our power to someone else, really important decisions. And it's a time when you're extremely intuitive and you extremely intuitive about what you need and what your child needs. And it's really, there's a lot of work to try and undermine that. For me, it was quite a rite of passage where if you can't speak up then, you're not going to be able to do it at other important times. And so if you're able to, it just, you don't really go back to giving up any of your sovereignty. You only get more powerful, really.
I think the birth process really showed me that if I wasn't in ownership of my body and my baby, then who was? And I was very, very aware of this hidden agenda that was told to me by the midwives and by the medical professionals, who I guess they're only doing their best or what they think is their best, even though they're actually working in an inverted system. Who had ownership of me? That's essentially what it was about. Who had ownership of me and this birthing that I was going to do, and who would have ownership of my child? What this also showed me was if I didn't have that ownership then when did I have it? Because it's also interesting to notice that as soon as you give birth, you have to register your child to the state with the birth certificates. When you begin to really look at this whole process, you begin to notice that actually who actually is in ownership of our physical matter and this physical body that we are carrying around with us, that we're intimately linked to with our spirit inside of it.
It's an area that I frequently research and read up on, but I still find it hard to really articulate or understand the bottom line of it all. When we look at the language, that I know that a lot of the language around our birth certificates and how everything's spoken is maritime law. And I almost feel like I'd like to get somebody on the podcast that really has expertise in it and just pick their brains to understand that side of the sovereignty kind of discussion and arguments, kind of the state intervention, the birth certificates, like you mentioned, and what all the implications are of it. So I don't know if I still can't quite get my head around it all.
I did interview the people's lawyer who was amazing on my other podcast on my quite a few years ago. And my understanding of birth certificates is you're actually signing your child over to the state and you become parental, like a parent, which means parental. So you're actually renting your child back from the state, a bit like you do with your car. So you're the registered keeper of your car, you're not the owner of it. And it's a very similar kind of contract law. Essentially, you have until your child is 7 years of age to claim them back from the state, but most people don't. Most of us stay as parents, parental. Well, the reason it is designed that way is because your child from 0 to 7 years of age, their energy is coming into their body. So there's a lot of esoteric wisdom to show this. And actually, Steiner Waldorf education is designed around this knowledge, which is it takes the first 7 years of your life to fully come into your body, your spirit to incarnate into all the organs of your body. And that when you reach 7 years of age, you're considered to have mastered entering into the physical world. So it's interesting that we have this opportunity up until that age to be able to claim back our children. But when you really begin to look at it, there isn't really an alternative to stepping outside of the state system. I know that some people have tried it and it's actually quite difficult to do. So that's probably a topic for another podcast. Essentially, what we're trying to do in our physical bodies, in our worlds, as we move through the physical life, often is to try and spiritualize our matter, which is to bring through all of our physical body, our physicality, our higher self, our spiritual, our soul, really, our soul work. And have been and are a lot of agendas that are trying to reduce that possibility of fully spiritualizing your matter, and also keep you out of your sovereignty in that way. And so, where I understand it is that like corporations, governments, sometimes even using like pharmaceuticals, that there is a methods and ways, including creating trauma within the body, that prevents this full ownership of the body. It keeps the spirit slightly misaligned. And when I'm talking about spirit, I'm talking about our all our energy bodies, that are our actual physical bodies inside this matrix, this map of energy bodies, where our energy flows, and it flows deep below us through into our lower chakras, and then up above us into our higher chakras, and connecting with source energy and also our higher selves. So there's a whole esoteric picture here where the physical body is in the middle, like the temple for the spirit to be housed in. And it seems like as we move through further into this, more like a transhuman agenda, people are becoming more aware that keeping a soul misaligned from the body, creating a distortion like a trauma, actually makes it very difficult for that person to come fully into their sovereign power. And it can make people sick and unwell, and definitely cause problems in their nervous systems, like high anxiety, fear responses, where the body is trying to stay aligned in its own frequency, but actually is being blocked in different areas where the energy bodies are being blocked with their interface with the physical body.
It's so many layers to this, and so many complexities. And as you were speaking, I was kind of just wanting to feel into why there is this attack on our sovereignty and this almost ownership of us, or attempted ownership. And a couple of things were coming to me. I was wondering also maybe what comes to you, Astara. One, that there's a certain amount of use of our energy as a fuel, as a value. And secondly, our creative power as manifestors. If we're truly sovereign and using the full power of our spiritual being, and our manifesting power, we're going to be manifesting the highest timeline and the organic timeline. And for those beings who don't want us to manifest that, knocking us off kilter, so that we can't manifest it, would be their agenda. But I certainly think siphoning energy is one of the reasons. And I just wonder what your knowledge, or what you pick up on around that.
Like the human being is being attacked on all different levels, even from birth, with all the interventions that come in to create birth trauma in the mother and also the child. And also within that, there can be a psychological division, creating separation issues, even taking babies away from their mothers after the birth, or even any sort of drugs being used during the birth process, which creates a difficulty for bonding between the mother and child. So people are being hit on the physical level, the psychological level, and also as we move through and we look at pharmaceuticals and the effect that they have on the body, like even the vaccine schedule for young babies, and as soon as you're born, like the vitamin K injection, like there's a lot here which is, entering and interfering with the system. And we could say, oh yeah, that's a really, that's something that's healthy to do. But when we really begin to look at the ingredients and understand the body in an esoteric way, they're actually blocking connections. There's a lot of heavy metals in the vaccines that are used, and it's actually beginning to block connections in the body, and this actually does create the bigger pathways being blocked, which are trying to house the spirit in the body. Essentially, what we're experiencing is, even from the first point of contact of coming into the physical world, this great deal of pressure on the physical body to be in submission to the authorities or so-called authorities around us, rather than being in your own authority about your choices and keeping your body healthy and keeping your mind healthy and keeping your relationships healthy with one another. It's like we're having a complete assault from all different levels from outside of us.
A lot of what we're talking about is in recent years, but possibly for thousands of years in different ways, there's been this hijacking of the human and their full sovereignty. We've talked about what happens through the birth process, birth certificates, and then sort of medical intervention. But we were also going to touch on other areas that have similar impacts and possibly similar intentions, such as transhumanism and more esoteric areas of spiritual control and energy control. We are really, yeah, it's coming from all sides at the moment. And linking this to our other podcast, this is because we're going through a huge awakening and a huge shift and really wanting to anchor in the new earth. And so any beings or groups that don't want that timeline have for a long time been sort of trying to throw us off.
What do you feel is the benefit? Anybody that's trying to take over someone's body or have an influence on it, what do you think that they're getting from it?
Well, I know there's been different theories on this. So if we go to kind of off-planet influences, which there's a lot, some people have been channeling that there are certain beings that need us to be on a certain timeline, like a lower timeline. And so they are trying to control that. That's their outcome. They don't want us to ascend. They don't want the new earth to come in. They don't want us to be on the highest timeline. And so everything's being done to push us down onto a lower timeline because it impacts this group or these groups. So that's like a big theory that comes through a lot. I do think it's to harvest our energy as well. So there's beings that are on this planet that aren't connected to source in the way that an organic human is. And so they will be siphoning off through all these different ways that we've been talking about, all this trauma induced, when our spirit is kind of broken, when we are feeling sort of scattered and through trauma, it's then easier to access our energy. And so that is an agenda that goes on throughout our lives in many different ways. We're seeing all the different distortions at the moment that are trying to shatter our spirit. For example, the distortions of pornography, the agendas of certain types of violence against certain groups of people. I think many of these are agendas to keep us in a trauma-induced state, so that our energy can be siphoned.
And going back historically, it used to be one of the ways to traumatize people was to remove them from the land that they lived on. And you'll notice that like tribal groups, like people, indigenous groups, indigenous cultures, that there is this connection with the physical that, and I think it's like a metaphor for the body as well. If you remove people from their land, where their cultural groups are, where they've grown up, where they feel connection to. And often there are, when I've looked at land sites, there's spiritual guardians related to place and also related to the tribe or the family unit or the ancestors. I've done readings for people where we've gone all the way back through their ancestral line to that spirit of place who's actually still looking after them. But obviously they've been moved on from the land. And I noticed that there is a huge element to this, that used to be the way to do it, to break someone's spirit, is to remove them from their land, to disconnect them from their physical place. And now it seems like, because that part is complete, almost like most people don't own the land they live on, or they're not from the land they live on, or their cultural group is somehow displaced from it, then now is like almost the second stage, which is like displacing people from their physical bodies. And it just seems like a really long, drawn out picture, but one designed by maybe beings, we should say, who have a very long end game. And I know that is spoken about a bit, that there is a lot of off-planet control going on this planet. Although I see this is changing, this is part of the shift into the new Earth, that we are beginning to get wise to this. We're learning it. We're kind of saying no, we're taking back our own sovereignty. It's a bit like these beings have much longer lifespans than we do. And I know that sounds a little bit out there, but if you consider that every time we're incarnating, we have 100 years in our bodies, if we're lucky, before we go off and then come back and incarnate again. And I know that some of these life cycles that we're experiencing, particularly as we move into thinking about the transhuman agenda, are actually preventing people from really fully incarnating again in their physical bodies, their physical matter. So this in itself begins to disrupt any old souls that are coming back in who might be trying to realign the agenda on this planet. Like, for example, I'm 47. It's probably taken me maybe about 40 years to really get to grips with a lot of the trauma in my body and the things that I've had to work through and deal with, even on an ancestral level. And I'm still working on them. So I'm not in my full power, but by the time I get to my full power, I'll probably be dying. And then I'll excarnate. I'll spend time maybe helping out of my body, but then by the time I come back to incarnate again, I'll have to go through all of that again. So if you think about it, even on a basic level, when you've got beings who have much longer time spans, like living for hundreds of years, or maybe even not having to deal with the nature of time that we have to deal with on this planet, we're up against quite a big thing here to try and reclaim our own sovereign being in this lifetime.
Much of what we're doing is it's not clearly mapped out. We're doing this partly blindfolded, feeling our way, and also we're up against, what I've been kind of really observing is that when people are talking about these outside influences, and they might also refer to the elite, who are on planet, we're kind of thinking that they're always quite far away and beyond us, but impacting us. And my sense is that these beings are closer. They're around us, and it's something we need to become acutely aware of now, of anybody and anything that is impacting our energy field, that is trying to use any type of spiritual warfare, energetic warfare, and not to be in fear of any of this. We're all very powerful beings, but because we can't see it, we're not given the ability to consent or not consent. And so we need to have these discussions and need to bring into our awareness just how much is around us, trying to push us out of our sovereign state, so that we can just keep realigning and keep pushing back and keep protecting ourselves at this very important sort of time on earth.
What I want to say is there is a paradox here, which is that we're often told in the esoteric practice and spiritual kind of practices that we are not our body. Have you heard that, Bethan? Like, you are not
Yeah.
your body. Yeah, that's quite a common thing, isn't it? Part of that message is to let us know, oh, we are spirit in a physical matter. We're anchoring into our physical matter, which is our temple, really, our body. And then we've also got this other strange aspect to it where our body is the sacred vessel. Even though we are spirit on in a housing in the temple of our physical bodies, we often have to incarnate, which is what we do when we're like from 0 to 7, and maybe going on all the way through our lives. Really, we're incarnating, but then at some point, before we get too trapped in the matrix, which is often affecting the mind and a lot of mind control, we have to then loosen ourselves enough from the physical matter, the physical body, to then see, oh, I'm not just my body. I am more than my body. I am my spirit as well. And so some people have that really innately in them and are born awake and know that. Some people go through an awakening experience. But then also we have to say to ourselves, okay, so even though I'm not my body, I'm here on the physical plane, and actually, this is my body. I have created this with the help of spirit over many, many lifetimes. And there are esoteric books that talk about that every time we come back in, we are actually working on the same physical matter. And so it's all held like and encoded in this physical structure. We do have to take ownership of it, because if we don't, then it can create problems if we want to reincarnate again.
And like you were saying, I just wanted to go back to around what we've been taught about our bodies in kind of in spiritual circles about, we're not our body, we're spirit having a physical experience. Somehow I find some of these teachings take away some of the importance and the value and the magic of the body, because the body is just a different layer of your spirit. It's a different layer of the codes of the value. It's almost like it's seen just as the flesh, and then we have all the different layers of awareness, but it's just part of the awareness. And our bodies are really how we experience the spiritual. And I think there's been all of this influence and impact to try and separate us from that true sacredness of our bodies and the sacredness of the feelings and the senses and how we experience our bodies. And that is the huge part of our spiritual journey, is to fully experience our bodies on every level. So the physical, the sensations, the awareness, the consciousness of your body, the spirituality of your body, it's all one. It's not separate like we've kind of been told, or that is inferred, or it kind of seems to be what some spiritual teachings are trying to get us to kind of to feel separate from our body, or that we should be separate from the physical if we're truly, truly spiritual.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully put, Bethan. We are sensory beings, and you're right. I have this wonderful picture coming into my head of our physical bodies and then radiating light, which is all of our spiritual energy coming through this anchor, which is the physical body, and allowing us to really fully be here. And as we move into the 5D consciousness, that's really what we're doing, is being anchored in the physical, but transcending the physical realm in many ways, and being in both worlds at once.
Yeah, true. And I think it's about experiencing the physical world on every level that it exists on, instead of just what you can see with your normal eyes. It's like you're experiencing the physical, but on every level that it exists on as you move into 5D. Yeah, so it's not really separating from the physical, it's just experiencing it more, and not just our bodies, but the environment around us. And like I think we discussed on another podcast, the physical world, everything around us is every spiritual and energetic being is represented in our physical world as well. Like it's all sacred, it's all part of the spiritual realms showing itself to us in the physical realm. So the two are not separate. Our spiritual world is cool. We just need to look at it on more levels than we do in everyday normal life. We miss out on 99% of what the physical world is and what it's showing to us and what it's communicating to us. But we're definitely moving, to understanding it more and more, and sensing the sacredness of it more.
And as you're speaking, I'm feeling this beautiful warmth in my heart, because what you're actually describing is feeling more alive through
Yeah.
being here, like being all the senses, because we've had this really strange, I think, relationship with the physical, which is because sometimes it's very hard to be here in the physical world with all of its heaviness and darkness and distortions and things that have gone on, and the way humans abuse the body on many levels, mentally, physically, emotionally. Actually, there's been a lot of light workers and humans that have actually disconnected from the body in many ways, like numbed out, tried to disconnect from the actual experience of living. And you see this a lot with people numbing out, watching screens, watching telly, numbing out through addiction, numbing out through, well, everything and anything you can think of. It's really interesting, this relationship with the body bringing, just like you're saying, like how you can feel more alive, how you can feel more into every experience. And that really is about reclaiming your body and all of the experiences. And it actually allows more power to come through you as a way of really aligning with your own sovereignty as this being who's saying, actually, I'm the one in control. I'm the one that chose to incarnate here, and I'm the one that's going to have an influence on how my life goes.
And you're right, it's about reclaiming your body, but and reclaiming all the parts that we're told we shouldn't have, like strong emotions and other aspects of our lives. And these are all parts of ourselves that are so powerful, and they're part of how we can manifest, how we can create. There's just been an attack on everything powerful about humans has been attacked in some way. There's times when I feel it from every side. If you're here to speak the truth and to live truth, and you've come here as a sensitive soul, you pick up on energies, you can feel like you're being pushed left, right, and center because there's certain beings and groups that don't want that truth to be out. They don't want people to feel free. They don't want people to be feeling into the sacredness of the physical, and they certainly don't want people to be creating or manifesting higher timelines. So each aspect of our humanity in the past has been hijacked or has been influenced and impacted. And yeah, we're seeing now with this shift, there's less power in these beings and in these groups. They're being blocked, they are moving off planet. The vibration of the planet is no longer comfortable for them. The ones that are in physical and they use dark esoteric practices, they're being blocked a lot more as well. But we're still up against it. We're still trying to really reclaim what it is to be human.
Just from my own experience in life, I want to talk a little bit about mind control. And maybe we can touch a bit on spell work as well. I never used to think that mind control was real, just so you know. And then I had an experience, a very strong experience, where I was shown that actually it was a real thing. And there are a few types of mind control. One was where there's mind control that comes from another person. And, we've probably heard, about MK Ultra and all these different types of programs that have kind of gained coverage on conspiracy theories, which are all true, by the way. Um, but I also noticed that on a personal level, mind control can be a thing. You can have people who are really good at mind controlling other people. And so that's one aspect of it. But then we have like mind control that comes through like watching television programs or listening to certain media. There can be onslaughts of mind control coming from different places. And another type of mind control that I noticed, particularly when it comes to parenting, is there is a lot of ancestral mind control, like where people are almost like controlling their kids in a kind of dominant way, in a really unhealthy way, actually, I would say. And that sort of mind control comes through parenting and ancestral lines, and also feeds into schooling and teachers and education. There's a whole agenda here, just an attack on the mind before we even get to the other places that the human body and human system is being influenced or dominated, or another person is trying to take ownership of it.
Yeah, I think mind control is massive. I think it impacts people that are in their heads more than their hearts, much more. So the more that you can be in your heart space, which is the qualitative higher mind rather than the quantitative mind. So anytime that you are in the quantitative mind is when you're analyzing, comparing, judging, which is useful, but it's where you can be more manipulated by mind control. When you're in the higher heart, the qualitative mind, which is where you are in appreciation of beauty, when you're just seeing the qualities of something, not quantifying it, then you're much less susceptible to the mind control. So the mind control is somehow working in the mental layer. And yeah, I really see this with people that have either they're just naturally very heart centered, or they've done a lot of meditation, they're on a spiritual path, They don't have to be, but if they are, they tend to have kind of stepped out of the mind control system, like the Matrix, a lot more than people that are in their heads all the time, every day, thinking, thinking, thinking. They're much Those types of people can be influenced a lot more by these centralized mind programs that we've definitely seen very vividly in the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's almost like a light bulb went on in 2020, and lots of people became more aware of this and more woken up to it. So, what other areas do you feel, Bethan, are areas that we need to be aware of in terms of being influenced or controlled from the outside?
Um, there's a number really. I do think there's kind of centralized agendas to control our minds, and obviously that comes through social media, through TV, through film. A lot of programming coming through different types of media, pop culture, music. I think the more that we can really discern what's trying to influence us and what isn't, that's just so important at the moment. You have to feel into what you're watching or what you're listening to, and really get in tune with your intuition, and just basically turn off things that have got mind control in them. It can also come through individuals. So a lot of people, this is something that I didn't know as I grew up, um, but now I'm very aware of, and many of us are very aware of, that there are individuals that actively use mind control, and they'll be using esoteric practices, dark practices, and that's not just people think that's just governments or elites. That's people around us, because they have a completely different agenda, a completely different intention to organic humans that are here to support and collaborate and be compassionate. Um, so that's again, you have to use your discernment. You have to start becoming aware of what's impacting your energy field, what is trying to manipulate your thoughts. Um, I've had experiences of my thoughts being manipulated, realizing something is off and starting to understand, how that feels and how to block that. Yeah, there's a lot of influences, but it's coming to light so that we can now transmute these influences. This has been going on for a long, long time on this planet. So it's not like we're trying to suddenly say this is like the dark ages. No, everything is being illuminated now. So instead of it just influencing us and bringing kind of negative impacts, we can now shift that and change what we consent to, and change these types of impacts so that they no longer send us down the wrong path, send us on a different timeline, no longer cause stress, cause anxiety, no longer sabotage our work or our relationships or our lives. This is what's been going on, and people haven't been quite understanding just how much outside interference has been impacting their lives.
Yeah, beautifully put. Because I think we're going to do some suggestions, aren't we, for how to empower yourself. Maybe we'll do some channeling of how people can move beyond this. Because I mean, we could go the list we could go on with, like mind control, also control over the female body, control over the womb, how the feminine's been controlled through history, and any sort of spell work that's been done and it's still being done to control all different aspects of how we function and where our energy goes to. It just feels like there's been such a mass siphoning of energy, and humanity has really been undergoing these almost it is like slavery actually, and we're at this point where we're trying to break free of this any sort of slavery that's been placed upon us, and domination and control, to
Mm.
try and reclaim ourselves and reclaim our own power.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it. That's actually a key way to really see where people are trying to mind control or siphon energy is any type of manipulation, domination, control, is like red flags. Um, And also something that I was just tuning into when you're talking, like a really, really important area that has been hijacked, that where energy is trying to be siphoned from, is our sexual energy and our sexual power. And that is really the most potent energy force. And that there has been so much thrown at that, so much distortion. Um, it's our manifesting power, it's our connection to the divine. Um, it's a huge area, and it's, going from um, our own personal sexual power, but then also right through to giving birth. That whole kind of um, timeline and whole spectrum of energies around our life force has been hijacked in so many ways, and it's an important time now that we are reclaiming all of these areas of our lives and the sacredness of those areas, um, and kind of rewriting the distortion that's been placed over us.
Yeah, beautifully put. Would it be a good time for us to connect with our guides and see if we can bring through some suggestions, some healing energy, some recommendations for our listeners?
Yeah, yeah, that'd be perfect. So I was just asking for a visual to kind of give whatever guidance would most support people, after listening to our podcast and what we've discussed so far. And the first thing that was coming through was that although a lot of this can feel quite dark, as you start understanding what's going on around us, some of the influences, certainly I've had times where it's felt a bit like the dark night of the soul, as the foundations that I had believed in, the people that I had trusted, all these types of things kind of had to fall away as I saw truth. And what I was being shown is that just by understanding what the truth is starts to transform what's going on. So it doesn't have to feel like suddenly it's a weight on your shoulders. Oh, this is just another thing I've got to think about or protect myself from. But just understanding more about what is influencing the earth, and the dynamics here starts to transform things, because you're no longer consenting. Once you know that it's happening and you can think and feel in your body that's not right, you've straight away, you are no longer consenting to it, because somehow by ignoring it, by not being aware, by not exploring and really kind of investigating things, we're then consenting. And a lot of these forces have relied on us, on apathy, which isn't our fault. We've actually been influenced to feel apathy because we're so exhausted from survival mode. Um, so just even starting to just think about a few of these different things, and being open to like the possibility that there's influences going on, can start to transform it. So that was the first thing that came through. The second thing, and this was just something I was thinking about a couple of days ago, and I was reading through some short pieces of writing I'd done on esoteric areas, on shamanic work. And it was actually some information that had been channeled by somebody, from star beings. And they were talking to us that each one of us has like the blueprint of the earth within our body. Um, so if you want to kind of send healing to the earth, you can visualize the earth within you and send healing to that earth. You hold it. It's like a mirror reflection, of the earth within you. So again, the more that we can understand what is true and start to learn and research and just bring more awareness, then that's why it has such a profound impact on the earth. It's why things shift so quickly. So as we no longer consent to it, and we're holding that consciousness of the earth within us, she no longer consents to it. Like, I don't think we realize how powerful we are as co-creators with the earth. And so that's why she can shift so monumentally as soon as more of us wake up, as more of us bring awareness to these areas. That was the second thing. And then what was also coming through, was the Fae. In fact, this has come through a little bit in the pod, um, just to bring people's awareness that a huge amount has also been impacting um, other types of beings on the earth who've also had a lot of impact and influence, a lot of their sovereignty impacted. And that includes Fae beings. And us becoming more free also helps them to become more free. And they are part of this story of ascension and what we're birthing. And they are here to assist. They are guardians of the natural world. They are the elementals. They are holding the blueprints, the true sacred blueprints of the earth. And the more that we become free, the more that they do too. So that was coming through, and that as we free up our own bodies, we're not just freeing up um, like our physical body and our own personal energy, but also if you understand that your body is full of elemental forces and elemental consciousness, you're freeing up that as well. That's why everything we do to ourselves is having such a profound effect on the earth and her ascension process.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you, Bethan. Really appreciate that. Amazing insights. And it also reminded me when you were talking about the healing on the physical body, is I've been present for healings where people have felt like an energetic connection to the earth, like if they've been healing their liver and then they felt like healing different aspects of the planet. So we definitely have like these portals of connection in our bodies to the physical land. So I had a lovely golden angel coming in, Archangel Christiel, who is one of the crystalline angels and working with the Christ light. So this beautiful gold and white quality to her. And she gave me this channeling, which I tried to write down. So I'll just read it to you. She said, Blessed beings of light, the old time codes are expiring. New energy is coming on Earth to sweep away the debris that has been congesting the Earth's energy system. The divine human is becoming awakened, and creation of love through manifestation into the physical alignment of spirit and matter is being achieved as we move forward on the new Earth timeline. We are ascending, and through these frequencies, we're shifting, and we are aligning with the fifth dimension, freeing yourselves up to the new dawn of time codes. Love, light, and joy are the frequencies that are embedding on the physical structure of New Earth. This awakening in the codes is also awakening in the human body as a divine temple, where life and enlivened process of love will ignite the fire of love in all of us. Wow. So that's what I received as a inspirational upliftment for anybody at this time who is feeling like they need to move into their more sovereign energy.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for that.
As we close today's podcast, I just wondered if this has impacted people, that it's really important to be aware that we don't need to fight these systems that we've mentioned because we're kind of outgrowing them anyway. And we're remembering that there is a divine law of self and a divine law of our own sovereignty. And as Bethan said, it's almost like you just have to feel it within yourself and then you're not consenting to it anymore. So it might be a good idea if anyone's listening today, they might want to meditate or journal on this idea of where am I leaking my power? Where am I outsourcing my power to? Where is who is owning my body? And then just to feel into those different aspects and to honor and trust and choose your own sovereignty, to choose yourself in every moment.
Yeah, I think that's really important that it's about standing in your truth anywhere where there's a decision. And the more that you're aware of your sovereignty, the more that you feel empowered, you'll make the right choices and to trust yourself that you will.
Yeah. And this is a journey. Like very few people just wake up and it's all done. I think this is a process that we're being invited to go on this journey and to invite us to return to our own sovereignty. And that in us in itself is helping us to ascend because we're learning the process of reconnecting with our bodies and the physical matter and making it our own. So, thank you for joining us this week. We will come up with some more exciting things to explore in our podcast next week. You're welcome to share this with your friends. We're available on Spotify, and it's goodbye from us.